Greater Love Christian Church. I want to thank you all for joining me by the digital medium of internet. I know that you wish you could be at our regular service, but we can't, but at least the Lord has allowed us this way to communicate with each other anyway. Let us start with a word of prayer and lead into the sermon. Heavenly Father, thank you right now for being with your servant as she brings your word. Decrease me, Lord, and increase you in me. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, and may the words that I speak move your listeners, and we go forth in the kingdom of Christ. Through Jesus I pray, amen. Amen. In 1995, Warner Brothers Studios released a film starring my then favorite actor, Val Kilmer. Kilmer played Bruce Wayne, who had an alter ego that was the main character of the film. Bruce Wayne was a single, somewhat recluse, multi-millionaire who owned Wayne Enterprises. But Bruce Wayne also had a secret identity. He was Batman. Also in the film was another character played ever so cleverly by Tommy Lee Jones. That character started out as a good guy, as the district attorney Harvey Dent. But after a criminal threw acid in his face, and his face was half disfigured, and apparently his mind was half disfigured also, he became a heinous criminal, pulling off all kinds of shenanigans and causing tumult all throughout Gotham City. Two-Face even spoke in the second person. He would say, us, we, we're. There's one scene where his two female sidekicks, who were both morally opposed, one was naughty and one was nice, they were vying for his attention by presenting him all sorts of delicacies for his gastronomical pleasure. And he responded in delight and said, "Ladies, you spoil us. We are of two minds as what to eat first." 3 times in the film, Two-Face speaks of being of two minds. In our society today, you may have encountered or even know someone who is of two minds. We look at these people and we say that they have a particular mental illness. Well, the book of Mark also addresses such a person, and we're going to have a look at his predicament right now. I will be bringing this word from the 5th chapter of the Gospel of Mark, verses 1 through 13 and 18 through 20, and I will be bringing it from the Common English Bible translation. Jesus and his disciples came to the other side of the lake, to the region of the Gerasenes. As soon as Jesus got out of the boat, a man possessed by an evil spirit came out of the tomb. This man lived among the tombs, and no one was ever strong enough to restrain him, even with a chain. He had been secured many times with leg irons and chains, but he broke the chains and smashed the leg irons. No one was tough enough to control him. Night and day, in the tombs and the hills, he would howl and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from far away, he ran and knelt before him, shouting, "What have you to do with me, Jesus of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." He said this because Jesus had already commanded, "Unclean spirit, come out of the man." Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "Legion, because we are many." They pleaded with Jesus not to send them out to the region. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the hillside. "Send us into the pigs," they begged. "Let us go into the pigs." Jesus gave them permission, so the unclean spirits left the man and went into the pigs. Then the herd of about 2,000 pigs rushed down the cliff and into the lake and drowned. While Jesus was climbing in the boat to depart the area, the one who had been demon-possessed pleaded with him to let him come along as one of his disciples. But Jesus wouldn't allow it. "Go home to your people," Jesus said, "and tell them what the Lord has done for you and how he has shown you mercy." The man went away and began to proclaim in the 10 cities all that Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed. The word of God for the people of God. And the people of God say, amen. Amen. When I first read this text, I immediately was inclined to think of a song written by Otis Redding. I might have heard it the day before, I'm not quite sure. But when I read the text this time, I came up with words to adapt that tune regarding this man's predicament. If you don't mind, I'll go ahead and sing it. I won't win a Grammy, but I want to tell you this story from an artistic perspective in song, okay? Sitting in the morning sun, but I'll be howling when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, and then I watch them roll away again. Yeah, I'm sitting on a cold tombstone with my mind almost gone. I'm sitting on a cold tombstone, losing my mind. Taken from my home in Decapolis, put in a graveyard by the bay. I broke the chains that tethered me and cut myself every day. I'm sitting on a cold tombstone with my mind almost gone. Sitting on a cold tombstone, losing my mind. Looks like nothing's gonna change. My condition still remains the same. I just do what Legion tells me to, and I'm in all this pain. I wish I could rest my bones, but my condition won't leave me alone. If only salvation would come and turn my split mind back into one. Please, I'm sitting on a cold tombstone with my mind almost gone. Yes, I'm sitting on a cold tombstone, losing my mind. But Jesus came, now nothing is the same. I feel good and now my mind is changed. Now I tell everyone I see what Jesus Christ has done for me. No longer on a cold tombstone, and the graveyard is no longer my home. No, I'm clothed and in my right mind, looking good and feeling fine. Hey, no longer on a cold tombstone. The graveyard's no longer my home. No, I'm clothed and in my right mind, looking good and feeling fine. Yeah. Hey, I can't whistle, so that's why I did that. But that song kind of, I think, really summarizes this text really well. What I want you to understand about this text is that we look at the man, when we normally hear this story, we call him a demoniac, and we say that he's just crazy. But we do the same things to people in our society. We look at people that are different than us mentally, and we call them crazy. The man in the text, we see that his community, they thought he was so crazy that they banned him to the outskirts of town to live in a tomb among the dead. One live person living among the dead, talk about isolation. That will cause somebody to be depressed. The man had uncontrollable impulses. The text tells us that he broke chains, that he cut himself, he self-mutilated, he howled at the moon. You know, the howling at the moon, that isn't an actual word for that. It's called lunacy. And people who howl at the moon we refer to as lunatics. So the man technically was a lunatic. And today we look at people the same way. We used to put people in that condition in insane asylums and mental health hospitals and on mental wards of hospitals. But most of those places, at least here in Ohio, have been deactivated and shut down and just plain closed. And people now who would have been residents of such place were put back in main society in halfway houses and group homes, and they roam through manicured neighborhoods to the dismay of residents who live there. Society would like to probably put them back in a faraway area, just as this Decapolis area did this man. We even call some people lazy because it looks like they're not trying to apply themselves in life. And we even call them lunatics, whether they howl at the moon or not. We label them because we don't want them among us. Back in our city here, in the 2000s, there was a man who had a huge boom box and stood on a corner, and he would dance, and he would smile, and he waved at the folks. And sometimes people give him money, and he'd take the money, but he danced and smiled and waved at the folks. And often he changed corners, but he would dance and smile and wave at the folks. And people called him crazy. Well, in 2010, I was helping a friend of mine manage a coffee house he had. His manager had quit, and he had me fill in. And this man who stood on the corner with the boombox dancing and waving at people came in. He scowled at me, and he went into the men's toilet for a while, and he came back, and he said thank you, and he left. Now, my daughter, who was the barista on duty at that time, said, "Oh, I know him," and she told me his story. What she told me was that one time somebody had slipped a Mickey in his drink, and it caused his brain to be the way it is. I looked at the man differently after knowing that. She also told me that he wasn't homeless. He lived with his aunt. He collected I guess SSI for his condition, and I looked at him differently, not because he collected SSI, but I paid more attention to him as a human being, as a child of God. And what I noticed about this man, whose name was Virgil, that Virgil was clean. Every time you saw him, he was not unkempt. He did not emit bodily odors. He did not scream nasty things at people unless you made him mad. But for the most part, he was a cordial guy who just liked to dance with his boombox and say hey to the people driving by. I had over the years opportunity to engage in several conversations with Virgil. The more he came in the coffee house, the more friendly he became toward me. And I would see him out, and he would notice me. He'd go, hey, you know, we stop and chat, or, you know, if I had some spare bucks in my pocket, I'd give it to him, and he'd do his little dance and move on. I mean, I would move on. I learned from Virgil that he had adult children. I learned from Virgil that he believed that God was supreme. I learned from Virgil that he was up to date on local politics. We called him crazy. Virgil never thought himself crazy. And I'm wondering if the man in our text found himself or thought of himself as crazy. Unlike Virgil, the man in the text did not have an aunt's house to go home to every night. And unlike Two-Face, the man couldn't roam the city causing havoc. The man was relegated to a graveyard full of dead people. He was stuck looking at a lake while he sat on tombstones. He was used to people disassociating with him. He was used to people not wanting to be around him. He was used to people harming him. So when he sat there that day and he saw Jesus come, from far away he saw the boat, something in him made him run down to Jesus and address him. Now, the man himself probably would have asked Jesus for a healing, but the mental illness, or the demons, as the story tells us, inside the man took over and told Jesus, "Don't you torture me. Send us someplace else to live. Don't get rid of us." He was overpowered by what was inside of him. He was overpowered by what was going on. Well, people that we now in today's society consider to be mental ill, they have fear of us too. They have fear because we place stigmatism on them. They have fear because we treat them bad. They have fear because we harm them. We might kick or roll one that's homeless living out on the street. Ha 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 ha. That's not funny. They have fear that we will think less of them than human because they're not clean and kempt, the ones who aren't. Or because the ones who might sleep out in the park like Miss Nancy used to do. But they are children of God, just like this man was a child. And something in this man recognized Jesus, and something in the people that we call mentally ill recognized the Lord also, just like Virgil knew that God was supreme. I want to ask you, how do you think of people who are mentally ill? Do you know any? Before celebrities like Catherine Zeta-Jones and Lady Gaga and Chrissy Teigen and Halle Berry spoke out, before famous people like Herschel Walker and Ryan Reynolds and Chris Evans and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and even Prince Harry spoke out, how did you think of people who had mental illness? How did you treat people who had mental illness? Did you have a friend or a family member who had mental illness and you totally mislabeled them? I did. I have a friend who is very artistic and very eloquent with words, yet my friend sits around the home and dressed raggedy, and her house is unkempt, and she barely touches her palettes and her crayons and her artistic tools, and she can't hold down a job. I used to tell her, you can do better, you can do better, you can do better. And I learned that she suffered from depression. You know, in our society, 1 in every 4 adults suffer from mental illness, some form or another. The man in the story, something within him recognized the divinity of Jesus, and something within him knew the power of Jesus. Even though he had no power over his condition, that something in him knew that Jesus had enough power to do something with him. Legion. 3,000 to 6,000 Roman soldiers made up a legion. Can you imagine being a person not of two minds like Two-Face, but with 3,000 to 6,000 identities inside of you? I can't. And neither can I imagine what's really going on with the people that nowadays walk around that we call crazy. The man in the text nowadays would be described as having dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder, DID. The professional stated DID is a response to interpersonal and environmental stresses, sometimes brought on by persistent neglect and emotional abuse. But one thing about DID is there's 2 or more distinct personalities that continually have power over the person's behavior, and the afflicted feel compelled to engage in whatever behavior that overpowers them, and they believe they have no choice. And Legion self-identified as having so many personalities, and they overpowered the man and spoke on his behalf and caused him to do these things that he did. So this man will be prescribed as being afflicted with DID. Other symptoms of DID are depression and mood swing and sleep disorders and substance abuse and compulsive rituals. I would say that the man in the text checked at least a few of those boxes. And there's no cure for DID. Professionals suggest long-term psychotherapy treatment if the person will commit to the long-term treatment and follow through with it. Doctors can give drugs, but they still need to take it. Well, in our text, thank goodness, there was a resolution for the man. Jesus assessed the gravity of the man's condition. Jesus authorized a resolution. Jesus permitted Legion and the other spirits to depart from the man and go into the pigs and restored the man's mind. Jesus did not care that those pigs were the economic powerhouse of that community. All Jesus cared about was that man needed to be free, and Jesus freed them. We too, though we are not Jesus and cannot speak a word, I can't talk to my friend and say, come out of her depression. But I can do 5 things. I can become sympathetic, empathetic, or compassionate toward her. I can learn more about what it is that she battles with. I can implement what I learned to help her combat in whatever way I can. I can monitor my words, my behaviors, my actions, my social media so as not to offend her. And I can inform others that mental illness is real and it's among us. 25% of the adults in our country suffer from mental illness. Jesus was compassionate. I can be compassionate. Just as neither Two-Face or Virgil or the man in our story could control their mental illnesses, so it is with the millions of people in this world today who suffer from mental illness. Let us do our best to make life better for these people instead of the living hell that they currently experience. And then one day, maybe they can go out into our Decapolis and profess what God, through our actions, has done for them. Amen. Amen.